Alright, we will be cleaning a 1996 Kawasaki KX80 motorcycle carburetor today. We've got it removed off of the motorcycle and we will just be going through and inspecting it, make sure all the parts are functioning properly, and then cleaning it and getting it ready to go. First thing you're going to do, which you would have had to have done already to remove it off the bike, is pull this cap off. And it's spring loaded. We've got a spring inside there. And then we've got this slide with the needle jet running down the center of the carburetor here. You want to make sure there's no buildup on this needle jet. Make sure that's positioned where it's supposed to be. If you need to reposition it, there's a spring in there, a little spring clip that you can remove. Pull that needle out and move. There's a little circlip that sits on that needle. You can move that up or down if you need to. If the bike was running fine, it just sat, and you're just looking to clean it, you don't have to mess with that. As long as this is clean here, there's no scoring, major scoring, dings or nicks in this. It moves freely up and down in the carburetor, then you won't have to do anything with that besides clean it up. Now you've got your choke assembly here, and in and out, and that is we can remove that, clean that up, make sure that the seals are good on that. And we will now take and clean the bowl area of the carburetor. 2 Phillips screws on the bottom here. While we're pulling this apart, here is the drain. You should have a hose hooked up to that when it's on the motorcycle. And what that does is if that float gets stuck open, instead of that fuel going running into your bowl and then out into your motor, that fuel will drain out this bottom port here. And that's why it's a good idea to have a hose hooked up. Otherwise you're draining that fuel right onto your engine crankcase, which if you're riding it is hot and potentially could start a fire. Now the other thing on this, here's a cap on the bottom of this. What you can do is if you have some bad fuel or you've got some gum in the bottom of that carburetor, nothing major, you can pull that cap, drain the fuel off, clean it all out. More than likely though, if you're having if it's not running good, you're going to need to do more than just pull that cap. So we've got the float or the bowl off here, and we've got your float in here. It's a plastic float, adjustable with your needle right here, and we'll go ahead and pull this float off. Sometimes you can use a pick, sometimes it's finger tight, sometimes you got to use a little more pressure on it. You want to make sure that you don't use a hammer and beat on these very hard because they are very fragile and they break very, very easily. So we can get our fingers on this needle here. We'll pull that needle out, or this pin here, set that aside, and we'll pull the float up and the needle. This needle will sit down in there. Now on these you don't have a replaceable seat, so if your seat is damaged and you're leaking fuel constantly, if you can't adjust it anymore here, then you have to replace your carburetor. On this needle here, if there is any grooves in this rubber piece on the bottom of this needle, then this needs replaced. And if you've replaced this, you've adjusted this right here on the float, and that's not fixing your problem, then you're going to need to replace the carburetor body. Here's your main jet here, and we've got your pilot jet here. Now this pilot jet is what will take your carburetor from idle to about a quarter throttle. So if your bike just isn't idling and your choke is functioning properly, you may have something stuck in this pilot jet. So you want to take that out, and what you want to do when you clean it out, you want to hold it up to light, and as long as you can see through it and it's cleaned out, I use compressed air, and I'll just blow either side of there and carburetor cleaner if we need to, and clean that out. Here is your main jet here. This is your main jet. Now you can pull this out, and same on this. If you can see through it looking up towards the light, then you are good to go. You want to make sure you blow through it with carb cleaner and compressed air, and you're all set. Now we will clean this carburetor and put it back together. You want to use compressed air. You can blow through all of the ports. We're going to take this choke assembly apart. That way we make sure down there is clean as well. It's a 14mm wrench to remove this cap. There's your plunger there. You want to make sure there's no debris down in there. You can take and clean this, blow it out, and then use compressed air on it as well. Now when you're blowing through them, you can blow through them that way. This needle valve here, is where that fuel comes in, so you want to make sure that you're getting fuel out this way. Main jet here will go straight through. And if it didn't blow through the top there, then you've got other issues. Your pilot jet area here will come out on the engine side of your carburetor. You can see there's a little port back in there. And same way with your choke. Now it's all cleaned out here. You want to make sure that these ports are cleaned out. You can take compressed air, blow in there. You want to make sure that your air screw here works properly, and also your idle screw here works properly. Make sure that turns in and out. Now we'll put this back together, and we will put it back in the bike. So there's your needle there, goes back onto your float. Slide it back down in there. I'm going to take this pin while you're holding it, slide that back through. You've got your main jet we put back in. On this, the main jet, written very, very small, but it's on that brass jet right there. This is a 120 main jet. And the pilot jet is a 50. So that's gonna change depending on altitude, depending on riding condition, depending on what you have done to your bike, exhaust pipe, if it's stock, if you got a stock air filter. And then you want to make sure that you tighten up all those jets. Put this piece back in there, and we can put your bowl back in there. Make sure that's all cleaned out. Make sure there's no debris in there. This peg right here is where that fuel will drain out the bottom of that carburetor. If it's continuing to overflow, you want to make sure when you're putting it back together that you slide that down, slide this peg here down beside that, and then kind of slide it back. Then you put your two screws back in. And your choke assembly back in. Make sure when you have this out, make sure that it slides freely. And make sure that you get that straight when you're putting it back together. This is a plastic piece here with plastic threads. Sometimes those strip out. Slide the slide down into the carburetor. One side, here's where your idle screw is going to set, which is right here, right here. You're going to make sure that that lines up. Now you also want to make sure that your needle jet lines up properly with your needle jet seat right there. Slide that all the way down, make sure it goes all the way down. If it's stuck for some reason, then you've got issues. Put this cap on, it's an aluminum cap. You want to make sure you thread it on straight. I turn it backwards to make sure I catch the first thread, and then I spin it on. And there I'm set. Your carburetor's